We all think we know who we are. Our little quirks, what we love, what we hate, it all feels like us. But what if it isn't? What if the personality you call your own is actually less about who you were born to be and more about who you had to become just to get by? Let's dig into that.
It really all boils down to this one question. Is your personality something you chose, something you crafted, or is it a consequence of your life, an echo of your past, a past you might not even fully remember? It's a heavy question for sure, but exploring it could completely change how you see yourself and maybe everyone around you.
So, okay, you've basically got two big ideas here. On one side, there's innate nature. That's the idea that we're pretty much born with our personality hardwired in. But on the other side, you've got survival nurture. And this is the theory we're really going to unpack today. The idea that our personality is actually a collection of incredibly smart survival strategies we built as kids to handle the world we were in. Let's try looking at personality from a totally different angle. Not as just, how you are, but as a kind of fortress. A set of walls and defenses you had to build to protect your real, vulnerable self from a world that just didn't feel safe. And if you're thinking, well, this doesn't apply to me, just look at this number. 67%. Research on what they call adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, found that two-thirds of us, have been through at least one majorly tough event as a kid. We're talking abuse, neglect, a really dysfunctional home. So this isn't some rare niche topic. It's a huge part of the human story. Now, to really get this, we've got to look at a concept from the source material called Epa-Eugenics. Okay, right away, I know that second word it's incredibly loaded. So let's be super, super clear. This has absolutely nothing to do with the monstrous historical practice. Nothing. In this context, it's being used to describe how our environment, especially trauma, can basically sculpt our development, creating survival patterns that get so ingrained, so deep, that later on we just call them personality. And if any of this is starting to click for you, if it's hitting home, please let this be the one thing you hear today. You are not broken. You are beautifully and brilliantly adapted to difficult circumstances. This whole conversation is about understanding that adaptation with a sense of compassion. All right, so if our personality is a suit of armor, who or what was the architect? In this next part, we're going to look at how very specific kinds of childhood trauma can literally provide the blueprints for the traits we think of as just who we are. Let's start with this one, emotional neglect. This happens when a kid's need for emotional support, for someone to just get them and be there for them, isn't met. Home doesn't feel like a safe place for their feelings. So what happens then? Well, the child learns a really painful lesson. My feelings are either irrelevant or it's actually dangerous to show them. The logical adaptation then is to turn inward. If you can't count on anyone else for emotional safety, you have to learn to make it for yourself. And this is how a preference for introversion can be built. See, it might not be a natural pull towards being alone, but a learned survival strategy. Keeping your energy and your inner world to yourself just feels safer than risking it with other people. Okay, let's look at another really powerful one, gaslighting. This is when a child's reality is constantly twisted or just flat out denied. It makes them feel like they're going crazy, like they can't trust their own eyes and ears. The lesson that gets drilled in is deeply confusing. What I see in here can't be trusted. So what's left? What can you trust? Your gut, your feelings. So the adaptive response is to build this incredibly powerful internal radar, always scanning for hidden meanings, for what's not being said. And the result of that? A strong preference for intuition. It's not just about being creative or a dreamer, it's a survival tool. Your inner knowing becomes way more reliable than the supposed facts of the outside world because that world has proven it can't be trusted. Now for our third example. Think about growing up in a home filled with harsh criticism or where you had to be perfect, a place where just showing an emotion could lead to punishment or shame. In that world, a child learns really fast that feelings are a liability. They're dangerous. But logic is safe. Logic is defensible. So they adapt. They build a fortress of rational thought and learn to push their emotional side down. That becomes their shield. And this directly creates a preference for thinking over feeling. It's not that this person doesn't have emotions, of course they do. It's that they learned very young that making decisions based on feelings was a one-way ticket to trouble. Logic is survival. For our last core example, let's talk about growing up in chaos. An unpredictable home where nothing is stable. That kind of environment creates a constant, deep-seated anxiety. A kid in that situation learns the only way to feel safe is to create my own structure. So they adapt by trying to control whatever they can. They impose order, make plans, and seek predictability everywhere because their home life offers absolutely none. And that right there leads to a strong preference for what we call judging. Plans, schedules, and closure feel like safety. Spontaneity and open-endedness, which might seem fun to someone else, feel terrifying because they're an echo of that old scary chaos. So, if our personality can be this suit of armor, does that mean we're just stuck in it forever? Absolutely not. And that brings us to the most powerful and hopeful part of this whole story: reclaiming your true self. This quote from the incredible trauma expert Dr. Vessel van der Kolk just says it all, doesn't it? Trauma doesn't reveal your personality, it armors it. So healing isn't about fixing something that's broken inside you. It's about gently, carefully, and safely learning to take the armor off. So what does that path even look like? Well, it starts with this amazing thing called neuroplasticity. The fact that our brains aren't fixed. They can actually rewire themselves. Through things like therapy, we can get help figuring out what's a real preference versus what's a survival pattern. It's all about building a sense of security inside yourself. And as you start to feel safer from the inside out, that heavy armor just isn't needed as much, and your authentic personality finally has a space to step out. Which leaves us with one last question to sit with. If your personality is an armor you built to protect yourself, who might you be underneath it all? Who could you become without carrying all that weight? Thank you so much for joining us for this explainer. If this idea struck a chord with you, we hope you'll share it. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. This explainer was brought to you with care by digitizinghumanity.com, a Canadian not-for-profit aiming to be the world's first digital graveyard.